My name is Danielle Carter. I was 31 years old, a pediatric occupational therapist, and the mother of a premature baby when my father unplugged her breathing monitor so my younger sister could charge her tablet. The warning tone cut through the NICU so sharply that every thought disappeared from my head. My daughter Ava lay inside her isolette, only 3 weeks old. Beside her, the monitor display remained active on backup power, but its power warning had joined the alarm sounding at the nurse's station. My father stood beside the wall, holding the monitor's plug. Kayla's tablet charger was already occupying the red medical outlet. "Dad, plug it back in." My voice barely sounded like mine. Harold Bennett looked at the cable in his hand, then at me, as though I had interrupted him while he was doing something perfectly reasonable. "It has a battery," he said. "I worked with electrical systems for 35 years. That isn't yours to decide. Kayla's exam starts in 11 minutes. Her tablet is almost dead." Across the room, my sister sat with the tablet balanced against her knees. A charging symbol glowed in the corner of its screen. She was 25 years old. Ava was 3 weeks old. Yet somehow, my family had once again arranged the room as though Kayla were the person facing the emergency. "Unplug the tablet," I said. Kayla looked at Dad instead of answering me. That small movement told me everything. She expected him to handle me because that was how our family had always worked. Kayla had the need. Dad created the solution. Mom softened the argument. I was expected to adjust. The alarm continued. My mother stepped closer and lowered her voice, as if my reaction, not the disconnected medical equipment, was the problem. "Stop panicking," Diane said. "She'll be fine." I stared at her. Ava had been born at 29 weeks. Every wire, sensor, and monitor around her existed because her doctors needed reliable information. The machine my father had unplugged was a monitor, not a ventilator, but that did not make it optional. Visitors did not get to rearrange NICU equipment because they wanted a convenient outlet. "Mom, he disconnected equipment attached to my baby." "And he's putting it back," she said. "There's no reason to make this bigger than it is." But Dad had not moved. He still held the cord, while Kayla's tablet continued charging. Then the NICU door opened. Footsteps crossed the threshold behind me, followed by a woman's controlled voice asking why the monitor had lost wall power. My father turned around. The confidence left his face. At that moment, I did not know the hospital had already recorded the exact second the monitor was disconnected. I did not know the charge nurse had seen the alert at the central station. And I did not yet understand why the woman entering the room had the authority to remove every member of my family from the NICU. What frightened me, almost as much as the alarm, was what Dad did next. He did not apologize. He began explaining why Kayla's examination mattered. "Before I tell you who walked through that door, and why my father suddenly lost control of the situation, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and like this video. Stories like mine are easier to dismiss as family misunderstandings until someone's safety depends on finally telling the truth. To understand why my parents were beside Ava's isolette at all, I have to take you back 3 weeks, to the day she arrived far earlier than any of us expected. At 29 weeks, Ava entered a world of controlled temperatures, quiet voices, medical language, and machines that never seemed to sleep. I had spent my career helping children and teaching worried parents to trust careful observation, but becoming Ava's mother stripped away the calm professional distance I had relied on at work. Every update felt enormous. Every change in routine made me afraid I had missed something important. Marcus handled that fear differently. My husband was a structural engineer. He believed that anything expected to carry weight needed clear limits. Buildings needed them. Systems needed them. Families did too. For most of our marriage, he had watched me explain away my parents' behavior. Harold was a retired electrical contractor who treated experience as permission to make decisions for everyone. My mother, Diane, called herself the peacemaker, but peace in our family usually meant preventing Dad from facing resistance. Then there was Kayla. My younger sister was intelligent and ambitious. She worked as a junior marketing analyst while completing an online MBA. Our parents had invested years of money, time, and attention into her education. Every deadline became a family deadline. Every setback required everyone's involvement. I had learned to wait. If Kayla needed help, my plans could be changed. If Dad made a decision, disagreeing was disrespectful. If Mom asked me to keep the peace, I was expected to forget what the conflict had cost me. Ava's birth should have made those old rules feel irrelevant. Instead, I found myself wanting my parents more than I had in years. I wanted my mother to sit beside me when the NICU felt too quiet. I wanted Dad to look at his granddaughter and understand that the world no longer revolved around the daughter he had spent 25 years protecting from every inconvenience. Marcus saw that hope growing in me, and it worried him. "They can visit," he said one evening, "but the hospital's rules are not negotiations." We were sitting in a family waiting area outside the unit. Through the glass partition, I could see nurses moving between stations. "I know. I'm not only talking about the hospital." I looked down at the temporary parent badge clipped to my shirt. Marcus did not insult my family. He did not tell me I was weak for wanting them there. That almost made his concern harder to ignore. "Your father hears a boundary," he continued, "and starts looking for the exception. This is different." "I hope it is." A nurse passed us carrying a folder of discharge information for another family. I watched until she disappeared around the corner. "They're her grandparents," I said. "Maybe meeting her will change something." Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he reached across the space between our chairs and covered my hand with his. "You decide who visits," he said. "I'll support you, but if anyone interferes with Ava's care, they leave." There was no anger in his voice, just a line he had already decided he would not cross. I should have made the same decision then. Instead, I added Harold, Diane, and Kayla Bennett to Ava's approved visitor list. By the beginning of Ava's third week, she was stable but still dependent on continuous monitoring. I understood enough to feel cautiously hopeful and enough to know that stability did not mean the rules had become optional. The morning my family planned to visit, Marcus told me he needed to meet his mother near the unit entrance before our scheduled care meeting. He promised he would return quickly. I did not think anything of it. I had met Marcus's mother, Evelyn, many times. My parents had met her too, although Dad rarely showed interest in another person's work unless he believed it affected him directly. I watched Marcus leave, then checked the visitor authorization on my phone. 3 approved names appeared beneath ours. Harold Bennett, Diane Bennett, Kayla Bennett. For a moment, I considered removing them. Then my mother sent a message saying they had reached the hospital and could not wait to see Ava. I told myself this visit could be a beginning. The secured doors opened several minutes later. Dad walked in first. Mom followed with an overnight bag she had filled with things she thought I might need. Kayla came last, holding her tablet against her chest and repeatedly checking the battery indicator. Dad glanced at Ava's isolette. Then his attention moved to Kayla. "How much charge do you have left?" he asked. 14%. Mom immediately looked toward the outlets. Something tightened inside me. "No one touches anything in this room," I said. "If you need to charge it, ask a nurse where you're allowed to plug it in." Dad smiled with the patient expression he used whenever he believed I was worrying unnecessarily. "Danielle," he said, "I know how electricity works." At the time, I thought it was only arrogance. Less than half an hour later, that sentence would become part of an official hospital report. The problem with my father's confidence was that it made ordinary cautions sound like challenges. Dad washed his hands only after I reminded him twice. Then he moved one of the visitor chairs closer to Ava's isolette, stopping only when a nurse explained that the space around her equipment had to remain clear. He gave the chair an irritated glance. I was only trying to see my granddaughter. The nurse remained calm. You can see her from the marked visitor area. Dad muttered something about hospitals creating rules for everything, but he stepped back. Mom pretended not to hear him. She opened the bag she had brought and began placing things on the small counter, a clean sweater, a package of snacks, and a folder of mail she thought I might want. Her familiar movements made the visit feel almost normal. For several minutes, I allowed myself to believe I had worried for nothing. Mom stood near Ava and pressed her hand to her mouth. Her eyes filled, and when she looked at me, I saw the tenderness I had been waiting for. "She's beautiful," she whispered. The tightness in my chest eased. "Yes," I said, "she is." Dad studied the monitor beside Ava with the concentration he usually reserved for equipment he intended to criticize. "What does that one do?" "It tracks her breathing, heart rate, and oxygen level." "And she still needs all of that?" "Yes." "She looks fine." "She is doing well because they're watching her carefully." Dad nodded as though he had reached a different conclusion. Behind him, Kayla had already opened her tablet. She checked the time, connected to the hospital's wireless network, and began moving through the setup page for her examination. I tried not to resent her for it. She had warned us that the exam was scheduled that morning. Dad had insisted she should not have to choose between visiting Ava and completing it. In his mind, the obvious solution was for everyone else to organize the visit around her deadline. "How long will it take?" Mom asked. 90 minutes, unless the proctor has trouble verifying me." "You can take it here." Kayla glanced around the room. "It's quiet enough." "This is still Ava's room," I said. "If the nurses need to come in, they're coming in." "I know. And you can't record anything. The exam software only records me." "You should confirm that with the nurse." Kayla sighed. Dad looked at me. "She understands. I'm responsible for what happens in this room." His expression hardened slightly. There it was, the change that always came when I moved from requesting to deciding. Mom stepped between us emotionally before either of us said more. "Let's not argue," she said. "Today is supposed to be about supporting Danielle." But her eyes were on me when she said it. Kayla entered her login information. The screen brightness shifted and a low battery warning appeared. 14%, she said again. "You charged it before we left," Dad replied. "It must not have connected properly." Mom immediately looked around the room. "There has to be somewhere you can plug it in." "There's a guest charging station near the waiting area," I said. Kayla checked the time. "I can't take the exam out there. People are talking." "Then reschedule it." "I can't. It's a final." Dad walked toward the wall. "Dad." "I'm looking." "The outlets beside Ava are for medical equipment." "I can see that." A nurse passed the doorway, and I asked where visitors could safely charge personal devices. She pointed toward the family waiting area and confirmed that the outlets inside Ava's room were not for visitor use. "Thank you," I said. Dad waited until she had moved away. Then he looked at the red outlet behind the monitor. A label identified it as part of the hospital's emergency power system. The monitor's plug occupied the upper socket. The lower socket was blocked by the arrangement of the equipment. Kayla's battery dropped to 13%. "Dad, don't even think about it." He leaned closer to the monitor display. "This has a battery symbol. That does not mean you can unplug it. It means it has backup power. It means hospital staff decide how it is powered." Kayla pressed her fingers against her forehead. "My exam starts in 11 minutes. Dad reached behind the monitor. I stepped toward him. "Do not touch that plug." He turned his head just enough to look at me. "I know what I'm doing." Then he pulled it from the wall. A power warning sounded immediately. The monitor stayed active, but a message appeared on its screen as the alert reached the central station. Kayla passed Dad her charger. He inserted it into the red outlet and looked satisfied when the charging symbol appeared. The room snapped back to the moment where I began this story. The alarm. Dad holding the medical cord. Mom asking me not to panic. Kayla's tablet drawing power from the outlet assigned to Ava's monitor. Then the door opened. Elena Ruiz, the NICU charge nurse, entered first. What was disconnected? Her attention moved from the monitor to the cable in Dad's hand, and then to Kayla's charger. Step away from the equipment, she said. A woman entered directly behind her. She wore a dark professional suit beneath a white hospital coat. Her silver identification badge was clipped at eye level, but my father was too focused on defending himself to read it. Evelyn Carter looked at the red outlet, the tablet charger, and the monitor's power warning. Her expression did not change. Elena, restore the approved configuration, she said. Dad lifted the monitor cable. It's right here. I was about to put it back. Elena did not take the cord from him. Place it on the counter and move away. Something in her voice finally made him obey. She removed Kayla's charger, reconnected the monitor, and checked its status. Another nurse joined her. Together, they reviewed Ava's readings and confirmed that the monitor had remained active on backup power. I stood beside the isolette, unable to take my eyes off my daughter. Is she all right? Elena completed her assessment before answering. She's stable. The monitor remained functional, and the central station received the power alert immediately. I closed my eyes for half a second. Relief moved through me so quickly that my knees weakened. I held the edge of the chair until I felt steady again. Behind me, Dad exhaled as though Elena's words had proven him correct. There, he said, no harm done. Evelyn looked at him. That is not what she said. Dad's face tightened. Elena said the monitor has a battery. I recognized the backup indicator. You also received a direct instruction from Ava's mother not to touch it. She was panicking. I was not panicking, I said. I told you exactly what the nurse had already told you. Mom moved toward Evelyn. This is a family misunderstanding. Evelyn's gaze remained on Dad. Interference with regulated medical equipment is not a family misunderstanding. Dad gave her a closer look. Evelyn. Yes, Harold. My parents had met Marcus's mother several times. Dad knew she was a physician, but he had never shown enough interest to remember the details. To him, Evelyn had always been Marcus's quiet, highly educated mother, the woman who listened more than she spoke and never competed for his attention. You work here? He asked. I am the chief medical officer of St. Anne. Silence settled over the room. Evelyn continued before Dad could respond. I previously directed this NICU. I am also Ava's paternal grandmother. Kayla slowly closed her tablet. Mom's eyes moved to the identification badge clipped to Evelyn's coat. Dad tried to recover his authority. Then you understand this equipment better than anyone. You know it never stopped working. I understand that you disconnected equipment assigned to a premature infant after both the child's mother and hospital staff told you not to touch it. It was for less than a minute. The length of the violation does not erase the decision. Dad pointed toward me. Danielle is exhausted. She's making this sound worse than it was. Marcus reached the doorway in time to hear him. He stopped beside his mother, looked at the monitor, and then at Kayla's charging cable in Elena's hand. What happened? No one answered immediately. I did. My father unplugged Ava's monitor so Kayla could charge her tablet. Marcus's jaw tightened, but he did not raise his voice. Did anyone assess Ava? Elena nodded. She's stable. The monitor transferred to backup power and the alert came through immediately. Only after hearing that did he look at Dad. You need to leave. Dad turned toward Evelyn instead. You're going to allow him to speak to us like that? Evelyn reached for the wall phone. I am asking hospital security to remove all 3 visitors while the event is documented. Mom stared at her. All 3, I didn't unplug anything. You remained in the room while medical equipment was being interfered with, and you attempted to minimize the event during the clinical response. I was trying to keep everyone calm. Elena and the clinical team are responsible for managing the room. Dad stepped toward the door. This is ridiculous. I'll leave on my own. You will wait for security, Evelyn said. The hospital must document your removal. You can't use your position to punish us because we're Danielle's family. I am not determining the outcome of this event. Evelyn's voice stayed level. I witnessed the condition of this room when the alarm activated. I will provide a factual statement, disclose my relationship to Ava, and recuse myself from the investigation. Dad opened his mouth, but Elena interrupted him. Who physically removed the monitor plug? I did, he said, because the monitor had a battery and my daughter had an exam. The words remained in the room after he finished. Dad seemed to realize too late that he had made the admission in front of the charge nurse, the chief medical officer, Marcus, and the security officers arriving at the door. One officer asked him to step into the corridor. Mom reached for my hand. I moved it away. Danielle, please, she said. Tell them this was confusion. You heard me tell him not to touch it. Your father thought he understood. He thought my instruction didn't matter. Kayla rose from her chair and held the tablet against her chest. I never asked him to unplug the monitor. You handed him your charger. I thought he had found an outlet. The one directly behind Ava's monitor. Her face changed, but she did not answer. Security escorted them from the room. Mom looked over her shoulder at me as the door closed. The expression on her face was not anger. It was disbelief, as though she could not understand why I had allowed strangers to enforce a boundary she expected me to remove. The room became quiet again. Elena remained with Ava while another staff member recorded the equipment's status. Evelyn stepped into the corridor and notified the appropriate hospital office that she was a witness with a family connection. Marcus came to my side. I kept my eyes on Ava. She's safe, he said. I know. You stopped him. Not fast enough. The alarm activated immediately. The staff responded. She's safe. He looked at me while I told him not to do it. Marcus did not try to explain Dad's behavior. That was one of the reasons I trusted him. He rested his hand on the back of my chair and waited until I could breathe normally again. Elena approached after finishing the assessment. The monitor's internal battery remained active, she explained. The central system continued receiving information. We still treat any unauthorized disconnections seriously because visitors cannot decide which equipment is safe to move. Did it affect Ava? We have no indication that it did. The answer loosened something inside me. For several minutes, the only thing I could feel was relief. Then came the anger. Not the explosive kind. Mine was colder. Dad had not acted because the room confused him. He had understood there was medical equipment in front of him. He had recognized the backup power symbol. He had heard a nurse say the outlets were not for visitors. He had simply decided his judgment mattered more. A patient safety representative met with me later that morning. The hospital had already preserved the time-stamped monitor event and the central alarm record. Elena's documentation identified the disconnection and the immediate response. The visitor access system confirmed exactly who had entered the unit. Evelyn submitted her witness account separately and formally removed herself from any decision involving discipline, security restrictions, or referral outside the hospital. No one needed her authority to establish what happened. The systems designed to protect Ava had recorded it. Dad had admitted it himself. Before the patient safety representative left, she sent a preliminary incident statement to my secure hospital account. I opened it on my phone. The first page contained basic information about Ava and the room. The second asked me to describe what I had seen, what instructions had been given, and whether anyone had pressured me to change my account. That final question felt strangely premature. By that evening, I understood why it was there. Dad called first. I watched his name appear on my screen, while Marcus sat across from me in the waiting area. "You don't have to answer," he said. "I know." I answered anyway. Dad did not ask about Ava. His first question was whether I had spoken to the hospital investigator. "Yes." "What did you tell them?" "The truth." He lowered his voice. "Be specific, Danielle." "I told them you disconnected the monitor after I told you not to." "That makes it sound intentional." "It was intentional. I did not intend to hurt Ava." "Intentional means you knew you were unplugging it." "You're twisting words." "No, I'm finally using the correct ones." He was silent for a moment. Then his tone changed from defensive to instructive. "The monitor never stopped. That matters. You need to clarify that I recognize the backup system. The hospital already knows it went to backup power. Then there is no reason for this to become a legal issue." "So that is what you're worried about." "I'm worried about this family." "You haven't asked about Ava once." "I know she's fine." "You know because the hospital checked her. You didn't know when you unplugged the monitor." Dad exhaled impatiently. "Your sister had a final examination. She could have lost an entire semester. And you decided that mattered more than hospital rules around my premature baby." "It was a charging cable, Danielle. Stop talking as if I removed her medical care." "You interfered with it." The silence that followed was different. He had expected exhaustion to make me easier to control. He had not expected precision. "Do not sign anything until we talk in person," he said. The call ended before I answered. Mom called 11 minutes later. She asked about Ava, but only after telling me Dad was deeply upset. "He feels humiliated," she said. "He should feel accountable. You know your father. When he believes he can solve a problem, he moves quickly." "That is not an excuse." "I am not excusing him. You told me to stop panicking while the alarm was sounding." "I was trying to calm you." "You were trying to make the conflict disappear." "Danielle, please. Your father could be banned from the hospital." "He should be." Mom became quiet. I had never said anything like that to her. "He is Ava's grandfather," she whispered. "Then he should have protected her. He made one mistake. He made a decision, then he defended it." "What do you want us to do? Beg?" "I want you to understand why it was wrong, without asking me to rescue you from the consequences." Mom began crying softly. For most of my life, that sound had ended every disagreement. It made me apologize even when I was the person who had been hurt. This time, I did not apologize. "I have to go," I said. Kayla sent a message instead of calling. I asked HIM to unplug it. A second message followed. I only said him why battery was low. Then a third. "Please don't include me in the report. I never touched the monitor." I read the messages twice. Not when asked how Ava was doing. I placed the phone face down. Marcus had not commented during either call. He waited until I looked at him. "What would you do?" I asked. "You know what I would do." "Say it." "I would give the hospital a complete statement and revoke their access." "All three?" "Yes." "Even Kayla?" She watched him do it, accepted the charger, and stayed silent while your mother minimized what happened. She says she didn't ask him. She did not have to ask. Your family has practiced anticipating her needs for years. The truth hurt because it matched what I already knew. Marcus leaned forward. "But this cannot become another decision someone makes for you. Not your father, not your mother, not me. What if cutting them off makes everything worse? For whom?" I did not have an answer. He looked toward the secured NICU doors. "Ava cannot choose who enters that room," he said. "We choose for her." My incident statement remained unsigned that night. I completed every factual section. I described the nurse's instruction. I recorded my warning to Dad. I explained where the charger had been connected and what Mom said after the alarm activated. Then I reached the signature field and stopped. Signing it felt larger than confirming what happened. It felt like signing the end of the family I had spent years trying to preserve. The following morning, the hospital's independent review team met with me. They did not ask whether I loved my father. They asked what happened. The monitor record showed the exact moment external power was lost and restored. The central alarm log showed the nursing response. Alina's report showed that Ava remained stable and that the approved configuration had been restored immediately. The visitor record established that Dad, Mom, and Kayla were all present. Evelyn's account described the disconnected cable, Kayla's charger in the designated outlet, and Dad standing beside the equipment. Dad's own initial statement to Alina was included. He had disconnected the monitor because Kayla had an examination. The review team asked if I had received communication from my family after the event. I gave them the calls and messages without adding interpretation. The facts did not need help. Later that afternoon, Dad demanded that I meet him in the main lobby. Security would not allow him near the NICU, but the permanent premises decision had not yet been completed. I refused to leave Ava's unit. He called instead. Mom and Kayla were with him. I could hear them in the background. "This has gone far enough," Dad said. "The hospital is still reviewing it. Because you are cooperating with them." "Yes. You are treating your own father like a criminal. I am treating you like the person who unplugged the monitor." It did not stop working. Because its backup system protected Ava from your decision. Kayla spoke from beside him. "I missed part of my exam because security removed us." I almost laughed, not because anything was funny, but because the sentence revealed how little had changed. "This is still about your exam to you." "That isn't what I meant." "It is exactly what you meant." Mom took the phone. "Danielle, your father is prepared to apologize." Dad said something in the background. Mom covered the receiver, and their muffled disagreement lasted several seconds. "Is he?" I asked. "He needs time. He has had more than a day. He was trying to help Kayla." "I know, that is the problem." Mom's voice sharpened. "Your sister is not responsible for what your father did. She benefited from it, watched it happen, and said nothing. What do you expect from us? For once, I expected you to see me and my daughter without looking past us toward whatever Kayla needed." No one spoke. I opened the incident statement on my phone. The signature field waited at the bottom. Dad's voice returned. "If you sign a statement accusing me of deliberately interfering with medical equipment, you will damage this family permanently." I looked through the glass toward Ava's room. She lay beneath the monitor he had treated as movable. A nurse adjusted her blanket and checked the screen above her. Dad was wrong about one thing. My signature would not create the damage. It would document it. "You damaged this family when you decided my warning did not matter," I said. Then I ended the call. I signed the statement. After submitting it, I opened Ava's visitor authorization. Harold Bennett. Remove. Diane Bennett. Remove. Kayla Bennett. Remove. The system asked me to confirm that all 3 people would lose access to the unit and would require new parental approval before any future visit. I confirmed it. Next, I removed them from the emergency contact permissions Marcus, and I had created before Ava's birth. The changes took less than a minute. The emotional distance behind them had taken 31 years. I cried after it was done. Not because I believed the decision was wrong, but because right decisions can still carry grief. Marcus sat beside me, without trying to turn that grief into celebration. "You did what she needed," he said. "I know." It was the first time I said those words, and fully believed them. 2 days later, Kayla asked to speak with me privately. I nearly refused. Then she sent another message. I changed MY's statement. I told them what I saw. I allowed one phone call. Her voice sounded smaller than it had inside the NICU. "I knew what outlet Dad was looking at," she said. "I saw the monitor cable. I waited. I knew you told him not to touch it. Then why did you hand him your charger?" "Because I was scared I would fail. And Ava." I told myself the monitor had a battery. Dad sounded certain. "You let his certainty become your excuse." "Yes." It was the first answer any member of my family had given me without immediately defending it. Kayla told the review team that Dad had heard my warning, removed the monitor's plug, and accepted her charger. She admitted that she understood it was a designated medical outlet and that she had remained silent because she wanted to begin her exam. "I'm sorry," she said. I believed she felt remorse. That did not mean I trusted her. "Correcting your statement matters," I said, "but it does not restore your access." "I understand. I don't know when I'll be ready to speak again." "I understand that too." When the call ended, I felt no dramatic sense of reconciliation, only a small distinction I had never been allowed to make inside my family. Telling the truth was the beginning of accountability. It was not the completion of it. The hospital finished its review shortly afterward. The findings confirmed intentional interference with regulated medical equipment, disregard of staff and parental instructions, and an attempted use of a designated medical power outlet for a personal device. Dad received a permanent ban from St. Anne's property. The incident was formally referred outside the hospital because the patient involved was a premature infant receiving monitored care. Evelyn had no role in that decision. Her recusal remained documented from the first day. Dad blamed her anyway. He told relatives that Marcus's mother had used her position to destroy him. That account lasted only until the facts reached the same people. Dad had admitted what he did in front of hospital staff. Kayla's corrected statement matched mine. The equipment record matched all of us. There was no hidden conspiracy for him to expose. Only a decision he did not want attached to his name. The legal process ended in the negotiated misdemeanor reckless conduct disposition already supported by the hospital referral. Dad did not receive the dramatic punishment he claimed Evelyn wanted. He received a formal consequence tied to what he had actually done. For him, the greater consequence was personal. He no longer had access to Ava. Mom wrote me a letter several weeks after the incident. She did not ask me to destroy the report or change my statement. She acknowledged that she had focused on calming me because confronting Dad frightened her. She admitted that telling me Ava would be fine had been a way of protecting herself from what his decision meant. Her apology was more honest than anything she had said during the investigation. I read it twice. Then I placed it inside a drawer. An apology could be sincere without making renewed access safe. Kayla did not contact me again after our call. For the first time in our lives, she allowed my boundary to remain where I had placed it. I did not know whether that distance would last forever. I only knew I would not shorten it to make anyone else comfortable. Ava continued progressing through the NICU on her own medical timeline. There were no miraculous changes after the incident and no new crisis created to teach my family another lesson. She simply grew stronger under the careful attention of people who respected the rules surrounding her. Evelyn waited until the independent process was complete before returning to the room. When she did, she arrived without her white coat. She sanitized her hands, clipped on her visitor badge, and stopped at the marked boundary beside Ava's equipment. "May I sit here?" she asked. The question affected me more than any speech could have. Yes. She moved the chair, only after Alina confirmed its position was safe. Evelyn never referred to herself as chief medical officer inside Ava's room again. She did not explain the monitors unless I asked. She did not use her experience to replace the nurses or challenge Marcus and me. She visited as Ava's grandmother. Nothing more. Nothing less. The contrast was impossible to miss. Dad had believed being family gave him the right to override me. Evelyn understood that being family required her to respect me. Marcus and I became more deliberate about every decision involving Ava. We reviewed the visitor list together. We updated our emergency contacts. We agreed that no apology, family title, or public pressure would outweigh demonstrated safety. He never told me he had warned me about my parents. He did not need to. 7 weeks after the incident, Ava met the hospital's requirements for discharge. On her final morning, the room looked different without the fear I had attached to it. The monitor remained where it belonged until a nurse disconnected it as part of the approved discharge process. That detail mattered to me. The same physical action that had once represented my father's entitlement now occurred under clinical supervision, at the correct time, for the correct reason. A boundary was not about forbidding everything forever. It was about recognizing who had the authority to decide. I dressed Ava carefully. The knitted cap that had once looked too large now rested securely around her head. Marcus prepared the carrier while Evelyn waited near the door, giving us the space to leave as a family. A hospital administrator delivered the final records envelope. Inside were copies of Ava's discharge documents and the visitor authorization showing the 3 revoked names. I sealed it without reopening the pages. I did not need to read them again. The alarms, reports, calls, and accusations had all led to one quiet truth. My daughter's safety was not something my family could vote on. Marcus carried the bag. I carried Ava. Evelyn opened the door, but waited for me to walk through first. For most of my life, I believed love meant keeping the door open no matter who repeatedly crossed the line. Ava taught me something different. Love could also mean deciding who was safe enough to enter. With my daughter resting against me, her knitted cap bright beneath the hospital lights, I walked out of St. Anne's while the revoked visitor record remained sealed in the envelope behind us.